Baruch Hashem, we're up to the third Perek of Mesilas Yesharim. Let's just remember for a few moments some of the Yisodas, some of the fundamental ideas we've learned in the second Perek. So in the second Perek, Rabbeinu, the first Perek of Zehirus, taught us how chashuv, how merkazi, how central, how important, how life-changing, how life-saving it is to do cheshbon nefesh, to evaluate, to be zoyer, to be careful in our actions and evaluate them and think about them. It's a question no less than sakanas havadon. As he said a few times, we're talking about risking our lives, our spiritual lives, no less than that. And otherwise, we're like a summa, we're like a blind man on the edge of the Danube, walking along happily, but easily falling in, Rahman al-Islam, to who knows where. And the Yetzer, and we emphasize this a lot, tries to seduce us and distract us and make us really busy. Today, he does more. He doesn't even let us know that it's so important, and it really makes us so busy. But even back then, right, makes us incredibly busy. You don't have time for cheshbon nefesh. You don't even know you need cheshbon nefesh. You're busy, right? We spoke a lot about the derech Yetzer Hara in general. How he's an ish mechama, lam bar mumis, and when a person reads a great hashkafa, a lot to get over him. Such a perek latzmo, such a yisod latzmo, such a fundamental idea latzmo. And I believe I said this, but I want to say it again to the Yetzer Hara. Yasher Koyach. Mamish, like I wish I could be as much sliach as him. And what he's done in the last 30 years with technology, if he was doing well beforehand, he's outshined himself recently, creating something which is just so distracting and so debilitating. Yes, there are many good uses for technology, and yes, I'm using a kosher smartphone to record this, and yes, you're probably listening on a kosher smartphone device, etc. Correct. We all know in ourselves, Libenu Yodet, Maras Nafshenu, we know ourselves, we know from our children, our friends, our co-workers, that all the kilkulam atzumim, the time wasting, the mindlessness, the lack of focus, Gudvarim Yoter Gruim, in a certain way, that come out from it. And the Yetzer did all of it, just getting mankind. I'm sure others saw. I saw recently a thing that AI produced on how to destroy the world, and it basically said it would do what technology is doing. You can check it out yourself. It's not funny, right? I should be laughing, but it's incredible. So it's doing it, right? So Yesher Koch to the Yetzer Hara. You see how smart he is, and now I hope that we appreciate from there how smart we have to be to avoid him, how we get to it. Okay, so with all that, friends, now we get to him. We said also, very importantly, at the end of the Perek, how only with the Kadosh Baruch Hu helping us, we have to put in our effort, but only with Siyata D'Shmaya can we fully win the battles. And that means, of course, a person therefore must always turn to the Rebbeinu Shalom. If it's dependent on, if it's just me, no, so it's just me. But if it's the Rebbeinu Shalom's, I need his Ezra, I need his Siyata D'Shmaya, as Rabbeinu told us and defined for us and clarified for us from the Gemara, Il Moli HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ozro, Eino Yachol Lo. 3 words, Eino Yachol Lo. So we always have to turn to Hashem, daven for Hatzlacha. Of course, I'm speaking to myself. Don't forget about He who gives us, who knows in the Koch, Lasot Chayil, not just in Parnas and Ruchnias also. We always have to turn to Him. And now we see, friends, in the third Perek, again, an idea which we'll repeat, is the incredible organization of Mesilas Yesharim. First we had Zehirus, and now we have Chelke Zehirus, and the fourth Perek will be Kinias Zehirus, and the fifth Perek will be Maside Zehirus, right? The Mesilas Yesharim was incredibly organized, and you see that again and again, breaking things down. That's another thing, a side benefit, someone who learns Mesilas Yesharim, to learn methodology from him, to learn how to give over ideas, break them down, make them clear. Don't be marach too much. Mesilas Yesharim is not a very long book. I don't think any of the Ramchal's books, by the way, are very long. Just on a small personal note, I feel like whatever Hatzlacha I was over to a little bit with my Sefer Yediyas HaTorah is partially, and people told me this, other authors, and just someone, just a bacher last night told me that it was easy to take because it's small. So think about that. People speak, right? I've rarely heard people say, I wish that speaker would have spoken a little bit longer. It happens, but really what you hear more often is that people are crying the fact that the speaker spoke too long. So that's part of the chachma, the Ramchal. his organization, and perhaps notably writing something b'ktsara. I was recently at an event where there were 3 speakers, myself, my colleague Rav Manning, and my colleague Rabbi Karlinsky. Rabbi Karlinsky was the moderator, and I and Rabbi Manning were allotted 13 minutes each to speak about whatever we were talking about. And then Rabbi Karlinsky, as the moderator, was allotted 11 minutes. And lo and behold, we all stayed within our time limit as Moshe Shabbos, and then we had questions and answers. And I turned to the crowd and I said, before the questions and answers period started, right as it was starting, I said, I just want to note that we had 3 rabbis speak, and they all stay within their time limits. I think it's time for us to make a bracha. Sha'asa lanu nes b'makom hazeh. We've had a miraculous occurrence in this place. So the Mesilas Yesharim Road, friends, with incredible organization. Obviously, Chachma. I mean, that's not even saying Ruach HaKodesh. What a higher level Chachma, but also b'ktsara, and that's part of what makes it nice to go through it and to chazer. That's why it's a chazerable book. I'm giving this over. I suggest to everybody, your whole life you could read Mesilas Yesharim. Rav Wolbe, I think, learned it said 55 times. Why not? Keep chazering it every year. A person could chazer it. Incredible. I think they have a monthly Mesilas Yesharim, because it will remind us, as he writes in the Hakdam, of all things we need to do. Okay, so with no further ado, let's start Perek Gimel. Chelek Yezihiris. Hinei harotz lefakeach al asmo. One who wants to be on top of himself. Pikuach means like controlling. In Israeli Chadarim, they have a menahel, who's like in charge of the picture. They have the mefakeach, who's kind of like the day-to-day watching things. But someone who wants to watch himself, lifkoch einayim means like open eye. He has 2 hashkafot. It's 2 outlooks, 2 perspectives to do. Ha'achas shidbonin. He has to reflect. We've spoken about that word before. Reflect, not just to go forward. We're not on a train with Torah. We're not on a Japanese speed train taking in Japan in 2 hours. No. Yidbonin, reflect, look, and think. Shidbonin, the person has to reflect. Ma'wa tov amiti. Reflect doesn't mean just, get it clear, go weiter. I'm emphasizing that, because the word which the Mesilas Yesharim use a lot, we've made this point before, I believe, shidbonin. I have to reflect on it. I have to keep going into it, thinking about it, pondering, turning upward, finding myself, finding it outside. Reflection, reflect. Shit bonain, bina, that's how you build things. Bonain, question of building, that becomes alive in me, becomes opened up in me, mefukach in me, becomes a sugya, topic. Shit bonain, think about that. And so many times when ideas, I know I'll read a book and just go further. What are you doing? Take ideas in and just go gobble up more ideas, gobbling up more shas. Avdil. Let Shas talk to you. As the Heilige Kotzka said, someone said to him, I went through Shas. The Kotzka said, you went through Shas, but did Shas go through you? Well, what does that mean? Was meint das? You have to let it go through you. What is this word saying? Not just technical, like pushing kasha teretz, answer. Kasha, answer. Bonain. What's it saying? How to be boning myself from this? Livnos. Shit bonain. What is a true good? We know the answer from Mesilas Yesharim. Tveikus, connection to him. Love. Shivcha b'ro adam, that a person chooses. V'hara amiti she'enus mimenu. V'ashenis, is this the organization again, friends? First you have to know what's good and what's bad. Yeah, otherwise what am I? I have no benchmarker. V'ashenis ala ma'asim asher hu oseh, on the actions that he does. I have to know what's good and what's bad, and now I can think about what I'm doing. Is it good or what it's bad? I think when I reflect a little bit on the way I think myself often and others, when we will engage in a little bit of cheshbon hanefesh, I think we often jump over the first stop part, and we're not mechazik ourselves and reflect in what's the tov amiti and the ra amiti, and get that basis in ourselves stronger. Kirba sabori, connecting to Hashem, ratzon Hashem, lishma. We know the answers often, right? But all that he said, and in the first parak, in Hakdama, etc. What's the Tov Amiti? What's life really all about? Now I want to show you what happens. Especially we're talking to, I think the people listening to this are mostly B'nai and B'nos Aliyah. People are trying, people are striving, right? And are working on themselves. So that's why it's so important for us to focus on what's the Tov Amiti and the Ra Amiti. I'll try to give some examples that when we without that, the second step is going to be off. Without a picture of what the Tov Amiti is and what the Ra Amiti. I'm a mother. I'm not, by the way, but I'm a mother, but I don't get covered from my family. I'm a fourth grade Rebbe, but I don't get covered from the community because I'm not teaching in Yeshiva Gedola or Yeshiva Ktana. I'm only fourth grade Rebbe, not even an eighth grade Rebbe. Eighth grade Rebbe is really Gemara. I'm fourth grade Rebbe. Maybe I need to do something else. So I'm that mother. I'm not getting covered for my family. They don't appreciate a homemaker. You have to change the name, right? You can't say you're a housewife anymore. You're a homemaker, or you're an executive. I don't know what they call it today. Don't say you're fourth grade Rebbe. Say you're like executive 9-year-old developmental Talmudic. Yeah. So I got to do something else. I can't say fourth grade Rebbe anymore. I have to do something else as a mother. I can't stay with this. Right? Wait. What's a Tov Amiti in life? What's it all about? Right? The mother is raising a cadre of Ovdei Hashem, the next generation, and she's doing a good job with it. And her little children, her boys and her girls, are going to grow up and be B'nai and B'nos Torah with confidence, with simcha, with happiness. So her family doesn't understand the godless of that, the greatness of that, the teres rosh of that, the keres habayis of that. Rav Shlomo Freifeld, the great Talmud, Rav Hutner, the founder of the Shar Yashiv Yeshiva, he said that when he sees a young woman with children, screaming around her, she's in the highest madrega. She's above. She's in a different place. But you're not in touch with the Tov Amiti, so you get distracted. Now, no one should misunderstand me. My wife works. I happen to give people advice that they should look for girls who work today also, because I think the financial pressure generally is too much unless you're a big entrepreneur or a big businessman or a cardiologist or something. But the average fellow, is going to want to be an accountant or whatever. It's hard to live in the Jewish world without a wife working a little bit. That's a different question. Someone needs parnassa, etc. A woman needs an outlet. Ryan Leib said that women should work a lot today. Women needs outlets. I'm not talking about that. That's also part of Talmiti. But I'm talking about, I'm purposely, just focus on a theoretical situation. They have enough parnassa and she's happy. But it's that voice, lack of kavod that she's getting, which is distracting her. And then she says, what's the Tov Amiti? Like, what is life all about? And me as a mother, I'm right there. I mean, I'm waking up with the kids, doing the Til Yadayim with them. And I'm putting to sleep with talking about tzaddikim, talking about Avos Yisrael, talking about Klal Yisrael, talking about Talmid Chacham, Sipurei Tzaddikim, whatever it is, vital times. I'm being mesamech my children all the time. You are ach v'rak kosher to the Tov Amiti with these children. So you want to get yourself distracted when you don't need to, because of those voices. You're a fourth grade Rebbe for 25 kids. You're making the basis for these children. I knew a big Lamdan. I'll say his name, Shlomo Goldstein. He's a big Lamdan. He wanted to be a fourth grade Rebbe. I remember it was so inspiring to me, because not everybody understands how things work in yeshivas. It's understandable, but most people want to teach on a higher level, and there's something to that. You need people teaching on a higher level also. But this fellow was a big Lamdan, a big Talmid Chacham. Eventually, he had a kilo, was a Rav in Shul, maybe still a Rav in Shul, I don't know. The Kolas tract. But that was his ratzon. I want to be a fourth grade Rebbe, fifth grade Rebbe. He wanted to teach Yaldei Yisrael. But nah, don't do that. You're not going to get covered for that. It's covered. Well, so now here it is. I am going to light up Yiddish and Neshamas and give them simcha and confidence and basis. And by the way, if you know the Israeli system, and I love Hasidim, and I love Hasidus, right? But most Rebbes in the Lithuanian Yeshiva world are all Hasidim, which is a little bit odd, right? Because it's good to have a balance, but don't you want people from your own way of thinking? Like a kid's whole exposure, first through 8th grade and 9th grade, basically usually is often Hasidic Rebbe. Hasidic Rebbe's are great. No one should misunderstand me. But a little bit of balance, Lithuanian Rebbe's would be nice. But let's say the reason is, I'm not talking about society now, but let's say this person is thinking to himself, he sits to himself, I'm in Kol X amount of time, and now what I really want to do is I want to teach kids, it speaks to him, it speaks to his neshama. And Mama speaks to him. Nah, you can't do it, you're not going to get covered. You're never going to wear a frock like that. How are you going to wear a frock? What's going to give you 2 buttons? How are you going to get the 2 buttons? A chorban, it's mamash a chorban of himself. He might never become a Rebbe on a higher level, or he might be a Rebbe on a higher level that another 5,000 people could have done that job, and he won't find the same sipuk that he personally would have found. Again, it's not me. I don't think I wanted to do it, but I see people who do it, and they're good at it, and now. So what's the Tov Amiti? Back to that, friends. The Tov Amiti is you're doing Mamash Ratzon Hashem. And you're bringing people close to Hashem, and you're giving these 25 kids that support, and that kid who's a yasam, doesn't have a father, you're gonna learn with him on Shabbos, and that one whose parents are going through a tough time, you're gonna give them the love and the understanding and all the new methods or whatever that you have, and you're gonna hold that back because that voice. That's a challenge of the Tov Amiti. That's why we can't just go into the Cheshbon and Nefesh without understanding the first shlav, because a person could just judge a situation. Well, let's watch the situation without the Tov Amiti, without being connected to the first love. Okay, here I am. I'm a 4th grade Rebbe. The kids are making a lot of noise, and it gets frustrating. And I see in shul they don't appreciate it so much. I got to stop this. It doesn't add up. Yeah. But then when you think about the Tov Amiti, oh boy, does it add up. And then that lets you push away that kol, because it's not really what's bothering you. The frustration you have sometimes, the loudness of the kids, that's not what's frustrating you. It's not what's frustrating you as a mother. It's not the etzem thing. It's the voice, it's the sheker, it's the kavod that's bothering you. So the more a person, of course I'm speaking to myself, obviously, I have my own challenges in these areas sometimes, but but you have to remember, what am I really doing? What is this? How is this Beinei Hashem? How is this perceived Beinei Hashem? Well, some people sell themselves too short. Maybe you should be working, right? Maybe you could do a lot more. Maybe you should be a 4th grader. Yacholiot, that's not the point, but we're talking about the focus. We have the right focus. So that's why, just a little bit of a harchava, a little bit of an explanation, what Rabbeim is telling us here, that the 2 hashkavas we have to do when we want to engage in our cheshbon and nefesh, in our evaluation, is we always have to stay kosher, v'haduk, and connected, and thinking about what is life really all about, right? What is really going to make my connection with Hashem? What does Hashem really want from me? What's going to be the kesher with Him? So what's going to get me there, right? Me being a 4th grade Rebbe is going to get me like nothing else. Nothing else I could do in my life will get me there. Me being a mother, focused, happy, dedicated, well rested, not stressed out from work, is going to get me there. Another person, maybe not. That's way beyond the scope of what I know, of course, to know what or what. But I know, and you know also, friends, we all know that when it's covered in our head, or other people's views of what's important, not truth, so then we get distracted, and then we can make a bad cheshbon nefesh, and not do what we really want to do, or be with who we want to be with, and accomplish what we can accomplish in this world.